to another episode of Breaking Schemas. And John, we had a special guest. Now, I feel like all of our guests are special, but this one in particular is really, really, really special. Not only is he a Michigan man, an Ann Arborite, mind you, but he is a world-traveling, record-breaking musician extraordinaire. Mr. Mayer Hawthorne is on the pod. Mayer, what's up, man? That's right, exactly.
Record,
Yeah, right.
record,
Where's the Jamaican
record,
air horn at?
record breaking and record making.
That's right. That's
And,
right.
Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
record collecting.
There you
Record
go.
collecting.
That's
and
what's up.
and a fixture on my Rock 107.1, which I listen to in the garage when I'm out there tinkering away, and I love hearing your voice.
Hell yeah. Shout out 107.1 Ann Arbor. Yeah, let's go.
I mean, the interesting part about that description, John, that framing, is that I've known Mayer Hawthorne as a hip hop DJ for long, and for him to have be a fixture on the rock station, it begs a lot of questions. What's going on here? So before we get ahead of ourselves, I mean, that's disruption at squarely seen. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just start. Mayer Hawthorne, you are a musician, a DJ, a singer, a producer. How do you describe yourself? When someone says,
It's
oh, "Hi,
you
I'm
just
Marcus."
reminded me. You reminded me of that In Living Color sketch where it's like the Jamaican family and every one of them has like 16 jobs and they're all like,
You only
"You
got
only
one
got
job.
one job, man." Yeah. I sometimes definitely feel like I have way too many jobs.
So
But yeah,
how
I
do you
mean,
describe yourself?
I guess musician.
Okay.
I just kind of say musician. Sometimes I sometimes I'll be saying producer now because I just feel like people know what a producer is, but they don't really know what a producer does, and they'll just be like, "Okay, cool, good," and that'll be like the end of the conversation.
Yeah. But I mean, this. Let's keep it trill. Like what you have done, what you have accomplished, the life that you live, man. People, dedicate their hopes and dreams to be there. You have realized it, right? Realized it.
Man,
How did you get here? How did we get here? Like, how did this happen? I'm still figuring it out.
I'm still trying to figure it out, man. I wake up every day and I'm still just like, I cannot believe this is my life. Like, I get to do this for a living. I get to make music for a living. That's my job. It's crazy. I mean, the one thing that I will like say is my only advice that I usually give to anybody who asks me like, how can I make it in the music business or entertainment or whatever is work hard and be different. Like just
Mm,
do something different that because we already got a Drake and we already got a George Clinton and we don't need another one. Like we don't need another Travis Scott. There's already a Travis Scott, so you're never going to be as good at doing Travis Scott as he is. So just do something that's only you can do,
now,
and something that you can do better than everybody else, and that is the way to do it.
was that a was that a sort of philosophy that you've always had? Like when you were take us on the tour back in time. Let's go back in the DeLorean for a moment. Let's go back in time.
I
You
mean,
Yeah, like talk us through how we got to this place.
so when I first started making like my own, Mayer Hawthorne music, I was trying to emulate Curtis Mayfield and the Delphonics and the Moments and the Shy Lights. But then what I realized was those guys were so good at what they did. And I also was like doing things. I didn't know how they made that music because I wasn't there. I wasn't even alive when they were making that music. So when I would do it, it would like automatically get filtered through this weird lens of Ann Arbor, melting pot, and then slum village and 90s hip hop. And then it would just like, I would think that I would be like, yeah, I'm making Curtis Mayfield music right now, or Barry White or whatever. And everybody else would listen to it and be like, this doesn't really sound like that, but it is cool. It's really cool what you're doing. So I think it just initially it kind of happened by accident.
Hmm.
And but the thing that made it work was that it just didn't sound like anything else. There was nothing at the time that sounded like that.
Now, so here's the question, and maybe this is sort of a nature versus nurture sort of quagmire, but the question I have there is that when you were sort of doing your version of Curtis Mayfield, the Shy Lights, were you going into it trying to emulate them, and then as a result, it sounded just like you because you were being yourself as you were emulating that, or were you sort of remixing it in a way that only you know how? So I guess what I'm asking is were was the outcome intentional even though by happenstance you resolved to this output?
It was definitely more like I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I still feel like I don't really have any idea what I'm doing, but I know when it sounds cool. And
Hmm.
but if you tell me, I'm still like I don't read music. I did when I was like in middle school, and I if you don't use it, you lose it. So I don't read music. I don't know like if somebody calls out, a B flat seven, like I don't know how to play that chord, and but I know when it's right.
Uh-huh.
So, I think yeah, so much of it was just like me really trying to like when I first started singing, I just sang like Eddie Holman or Curtis Mayfield or like, right, that like the Delphonics because I just thought that was like the only way to sing. And then later on I realized, oh, wait a minute, like that's just like one style of singing and I don't have to sing everything in the falsetto like that.
Falsetto.
It was just like a crazy learn as you go type of thing.
But
But
Barry
yeah, I
Gibb,
mean, what was that
sorry,
about Barry Gibb?
Barry Gibb made a pretty good career singing falsetto.
I mean, yeah, that's still my favorite type of music is that like male pillowy falsetto
Yeah,
with the
it is
harmonies.
great.
It's just the best.
So
Mary, you said something really interesting there. You said you just know when it's cool. I'm paraphrasing, but you know when it's cool. Do you think that might be your superpower? Like almost like curator of coolness. And that plays out in your own songwriting, your own singing, your own orchestrations, your producing work, your DJing work? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think my ear is definitely my superpower for sure. Is just, knowing what sounds good, what sounds right, what what people are going to like if I put it out, what if I'm DJing, you know, what sonically is going to get the party moving.
Hmm.
when you dropped your first single,
Mhm.
just ain't gonna work out, right? Like
Mhm.
it sound like it sound very familiar, i.e., you know, the Shy Lights, Curtis Mayfield, but so unbelievably different because maybe it is this fusion of Slum Village, '90s hip hop, infused into this your version of that.
Mhm.
How did you know that it was going to fare well in the market? Being so different, being so antithetical to everything that was on the radio at the time.
I was so sure that it was not going to be popular at all that I was already planning my like going back return to hip hop producing and DJing, and I like had zero plans for having a career as Mayer Hawthorne. I did not, so much so that like when that song took off, I was like freaked out, and I was like, "Oh my God, what do I do? Like, I don't have a band." People were asking me to do live performances. I only had 2 songs, and I had never performed live as like a singer before. It was really crazy. It was a crazy moment in time.
So, so what was the
I called
intention
all
to
my
have?
friends from Funtelligence, and I was like, "Hey, will
That's
you
right.
guys be my band?"
I mean, what was the intentionality in going into Mayor Hawthorne? Maybe that's something to explore. So, like, what made you want to try singing? What made you want to try your hand at music that you typically weren't doing, and
I
then have the audacity to put it out in the world, feeling like it wasn't going to work out? I mean, it's wild.
so to make a long story short, I I wanted to be a hip hop DJ and producer, and that was really my goal. And I moved from Ann Arbor, Detroit. I moved out to Los Angeles with a couple of my friends, and the goal was to be a hip hop DJ and producer. And when I got to LA, I went to this party called the Do Over where all the cool music people hung out every Sunday. And I saw Peanut Butter Wolf, and I knew Stones Throw Records because
Hmm.
my homie Jay Dilla had come out and signed to Stones Throw, and Guilty
Right.
Simpson put a record out on there, and a couple people that I
Detroit
knew. I
great.
mean, they
Yeah.
yeah, MF Doom was on Stones Throw, and I was like, yeah, they I know about them. They're cool. So I met Peanut Butter Wolf, and I was like so stoked to give him my demo of rap beats, and he listened to it. Man, bless him for even listening to it. But he listened to it, and he was like, yeah, these beats are whack, dude. They're not good. But he was like, what is the the music that you're sampling? What to make the beats? What is that? Because that's good. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, that was like just some some music I made, like some soul music I made in my bedroom, but I only made it so that I could sample myself royalty free, so I wouldn't have to pay for the sample clearance. Because we would
Brilliant, by the way.
sample.
Brilliant.
I mean, it was truly just out of necessity because I was broke. I didn't couldn't afford to, because we would sample like an Eddie Kendrick song, and we would put it out. We'd press 1,000 records, and we would sell them. But then Eddie Kendricks would take all the money because we would have to pay for the sample clearance. And I was like, well, this sucks, man. I'm giving all the money to Eddie Kendricks. So I was like, well, why don't I just make my own soul samples, and then I can sample myself royalty free. And Peanut Butter Wolf, shout out to him. He was like, well, he was like, you're really good at that. You
Mm.
should do that. And I was
Mm.
like, okay, well, I mean, are you going to put it out if I do it? And he said, yeah, I'll put it out. If you make a record of that, I'll put it out.
Huh.
So that was Just Ain't Gonna Work Out, and there was a flip side called When I Said Goodbye, and that was the first single. And then but even then, I really, really, truly like still thought that I was gonna just do this, and it was gonna be a one off thing, and then I was gonna go back to making rap beats and DJing, and then I just never went back.
I mean, this story is wild. This story is wild.
It's wild.
And
It's really
just
wild.
for context for you, John, Mayer used to be a part of a hip hop collective in Ann Arbor called Athletic Mike League, and they
Hmm.
were massive, massive. Like everyone knew AML and just really,
Locally,
really dope MCs.
locally
No,
massive.
come on, regionally, Mayer, regionally, regionally. See,
Yeah, we
this
would
is how
do
you know
shows
that
in
he's like
Chicago,
an
Minneapolis, and
international
stuff.
star. This is how you know he's an international star because he's like, yeah, local is regional. Regional for him is local. So keep that in mind. No, but seriously, he's a part of this like massive collective, and these guys just terribly talented. I mean, I'm thinking like Buff One, just really talented guys. So I've
14KT.
always known
Yeah.
him in the frame of hip hop, but hearing this story says a lot to me about even my own self, right? Like for you, Mayor, I've always been in advertising and marketing. John was my professor in the MBA program, and he brought me in to do a guest lecture for him. I gave the lecture, and he said, "Man, that wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad." And he's like, "If you are really interested in this, then you should really invest yourself in it." And sometimes it takes people seeing something in us that we don't know that's in us to actually
Yeah,
drive us in the direction that's really where we ought to be going.
man, for sure. Yeah. And if anything, I would say like the real lesson there for me was to just be prepared for like when that door opens to like
Mm.
go all the way through it and just have faith that you're going to be able to do it. Have
Hey,
confidence in yourself.
hey, by the way, Marcus, I still see something in you. If you continue to work, you might get there.
Thanks for seeing the potential of me, John. I appreciate it.
Right.
So once the traction's happening with Mayer Hawthorne, you're pulling together a band. You're figuring out what is your stage show. You're figuring out who you are as an artist, not just as a creator, but a performing artist. What were some of the intentional decisions you made along the way? Because you've been doing this for a while. I think if my memory serves me well, first game came out in 2009, right? Yeah, is that right?
2009, yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for a grip. Like you are no longer a rookie at this. What were some of
No.
the intentional decisions you made as you started to like really craft who you are as a performing artist?
Um, a big thing we always were conscious of was staying on the forefront of any technology, any new technology that was
Mm.
coming out. We always were like very good, myself and my manager Jackson Perry. Shout out Jackson Perry.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my guy.
yeah, who we went to high school together. We weren't even really like friends in high school, but we both. He was in a class above me in high school, so we didn't know each other that well, but I knew of him. And then when we moved out to LA together, and when I started having a little success, he was like, "Well, I should just manage you." And he's been my only manager that I've ever had.
Mm.
So that was a really cool thing too that just kind of fell in my lap and has been amazing. But embracing new technology,
Yeah.
we were really early to get on like Twitter, and that was super duper helpful. Like it was the dawn of Twitter was like very powerful for my career. It was a time when like big celebrities would jump on, and they like in the early days nobody really knew what to do on there yet. So
Yeah.
they would just talk about things that they liked, and John Mayer and Alicia Keys and Justin Timberlake and Kanye and all these celebs would just talk about things that they like, and they would talked about, "Hey, have you heard this new artist Mayer Hawthorne? I think he's good." And nowadays people would never ever do that unless they were getting paid, but or they were getting like a percentage of it. But at the time it was like new technology and nobody really know what to do with it yet, and it greatly benefited me. And the other thing was like anytime we had a decision to make, like a big decision about a career thing, like a fork in the road, we always weighed the options, and we would always go with whatever choice was more fun.
Mm. Huh.
And that was a big philosophy that we had from the very beginning and that we still embrace to this day. Like if we can do, you know, two different shows on the same, you know, we get offers for two different shows or whatever, it's whichever one is going to be the most fun. That's the one that we do. Or there's two concepts for a music video, you know, and this director wants to do this thing and this director wants to do anything. Which one's more fun? That's the one that we go with.
This I think is interesting, especially your the number one that you embraced emerging technology. The irony of this is that the record industry, in many ways, have been disrupted because of emerging
Yeah.
technology. Now, I was working at Apple at the time, so I worked in iTunes at the time you came out, and you were a darling on iTunes. I don't know if you knew that, but like iTunes loved some Mayer Hawthorne for
I
sure.
know, I like really appreciated that support, man, for sure. Like we would notice for sure. Yeah, you guys would give us like the single of the week or whatever
Right,
every
lots of
time. It was
love.
so great. Yeah.
And it's interesting that like you took advantage of what was seen as a disruption to an industry and used that as a tailwind to sort of drive your ascension. And I think that like
Yeah.
the music industry is facing a new existential crisis when we think about generative AI. Right? Do you think of like as a content creator, as a producer of music, as an idea generator, how are you thinking about these new disruptions that are happening in music, and how are you bending to them, or how are you approaching them?
Um, AI is one that is really keeping me up at night now, and what I'm trying to figure out is how to embrace the technology because it's here to stay, like whether we like it or not. And I'm trying to figure out like how to use it in tandem instead of like, you know, to use it as a tool, kind of in the same way that auto tune really
Yeah,
transformed the music industry when it came out, and a lot of people saw it as like this big enemy of music, and it was like, yeah, it's taking out all the feeling and it's making everything robotic. But it was the people who took it and like figured out how to use it as a tool and like to accentuate, use it as an instrument, basically.
right.
Those were the people that really had a lot of success with it. And it's just about like finding, you know, experimenting with it and finding out what's the cool way to use it. You know, because
Yeah.
there is a super whack, boring way to use it, and it's just like, you know, figuring out how to not do it that way and use it as an instrument instead of just, you know, the regular boring way that it's made to be used.
Now, John, I don't know if you're seeing any parallels here, but as I'm hearing Mayer talk about his experiences, sort of what he's learned, how he's approaching the world, how he's thinking about the world that is just around the corner. I think a lot about students who are entering the workforce and are seeing all this disruption around them. Right? You see tech companies laying off tons of people. You see like a certain requirement of what's asked of them. How do I ever get that? But it sounds to me, as I hear Mayer's story, that a lot of what he was able to do is to not only sort of be there when the door is open, to be able to walk through it, but also to be able to be agile and to be sort of flexible, to sort of bend to whatever the environment was. Do you feel any parallels there to you?
I love this, but first I got to say, I've got this Cher, Do You Believe in Love earworm going on right now because I think she was one of the first to embrace autotune, and that it was a
Yeah.
massive hit.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that word agility, and I think you've nailed something here, Marcus. The agility as an ability to to embrace these changes, not just maybe embrace them and respond to them, take advantage of them. Like I like your attitude, Mayor, that AI is here and it's not going to take over the world. Let's hope, right? We're not going to have HAL 2000, but it will be. It is a tool, and I'm just to give you a parallel. I'm a little bit older than both of you folks, but I remember when calculators first became popular in my elementary school. And, we thought the sky was falling, that people would not know how to do math anymore. And then we have the same kind of thing when PCs came out in the 80s. And, right, these are just that, tools. They are tools. And embracing them and learning how to exploit them, I think, is something which you have done brilliantly. Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's the same thing. It's happened over and over and over again, and everybody always freaks out and is like, "Oh no, the world's ending." But then, we figure out how to use it in the right way, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. AI, I'm not gonna lie though, is definitely terrifying. That's it's a really powerful one, man. But
Well,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
and
I
that
just think like creativity is always going to be cool and is always going to win, and I don't, at least for the next, couple decades, like I just like there's something about computers that are always going to be a little boring, and
mm,
it's like the thing that makes good entertainment so good is usually like there's something a little weird and off about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
I,
I mean, at least for me, like my favorite things, a computer is never going to write a story like Pulp Fiction.
that's right. Yeah.
And it's like, it's just too weird.
I mean, if you liken it to music, you mentioned Jay Dilla, the goat, rest in peace.
Yeah.
It's like, he didn't rely on the quantizer of the MPC, right? He had
Yeah.
its
He
own
turned it
swing
off.
to it, right? Like if you use the quantizer, it feels very mechanical, right? It makes sure that it's
Yes.
right on the beat, and even
Yes.
you can manipulate the quantizing so it's a little behind the beat, like it's a 16th behind the beat, but even that feels mechanical, right? But
Yeah.
he would actually like play it live. He'd play the drums live, so it felt human. And I think that that's really kind of the crux of these technologies. Like there's a theorist, a philosopher named Marshall McLuhan, and he had this saying. He said that technology are merely extensions of human behavior, like the wheels extensions of the foot, glasses extensions of the eyes, clothes extensions of the skin. That these things just extend us, but they're still bound by humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And when we use these things to extend humanity, but still feel human, it feels right, right? And when you
Yeah.
hear a Jay Dilla beat, you go, "Oh man!" It just sticks to the bones because it feels like it
Feels
has
right.
soul to it.
Yeah.
You
It
remind me.
does have
You
soul.
remind You remind me of my younger days, my role in TR-707 drum machine. You're exactly right, Marcus. It just felt too robotic. Even though as an engineer and as a, kind of a digital aficionado at the time, it was so cool to be able to
Mm-hmm.
replace my drummer with a little box,
Yeah.
but it didn't have soul.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mayor, this idea of like agility as a disruptor, I think that we're on to something there. Just to, what we try to do is distill some of these stories, some of these insights that you have acquired over your time to so that the listener can walk away with something. And I like this idea of agility that, the opportunity presents itself and you've been to it and you have sort of the wherewithal to take all of your transformative skills and move them over into a new context. Here's a hip hop guy who's now singing in falsetto. And like, what are you talking about? Like that doesn't even sound like doesn't even seem like it's a real thing, but yet you have carved out a way to be yourself, to be different, but not like intentionally different, just being who you are and actually having enough sort of bravery to be who you are in a place
Mm-hmm.
where everyone's trying to bend to be something else. What have been some of the biggest disappointments that you've had in the world of Mayer Hawthorne, navigating these changes and all its agility, sort of trying to bend to the opportunity? What were some of the disappointments, the downfalls?
Um, so after the first record, There was a lot of attention from all the major labels, the big three major labels. They were all kind of courting me, trying to sign me, and I held off for a long time until Republic Records, Avery and Monty Littman came around, and their pitch felt right to me, where they would just try to like amplify what I was doing already, and they were not interested in trying to like change me into a different type of artist. What ended up happening was I signed with Republic Records, and I already had my second record done. And this record called How Do You Do? It was finished already, and I basically turned it in them, and we put that record out, and it's still. I mean, they just took what I was doing and they amplified it. They used all their big machine juggernaut power to amplify it, and it worked. And it was still the most successful record that I've released. It just went gold, actually, after, what, 15 years or something like that? Yeah. So 12 years later or something, it went gold, which is amazing. It's my only gold record of my own, which is very, very
That's
cool.
huge, though.
It's huge. It's a very cool thing. So after that, for the third record, they decided we're gonna try to make him into something that he's not. And they brought in all these outside producers and songwriters, and it was a really cool experience, but it wasn't my natural thing. And then, I mean, it was just, I mean, I got to work with all these amazing producers. It was really, really cool, but we spent so much money on that record as a result, and it ended up being not exactly the record that I wanted to put out, but it was the record that they wanted me to put out. And it didn't work as well. And that was a disappointment for sure. And then what ended up happening was a lot of the people that were really excited about me at that label when I signed, they left and took other jobs at other labels. So having those cheerleaders on your team with you is like really, really important, man. Super duper important.
Like in the world of business, we always talk about those people who are going to be sponsors for you. They're going to talk about you when you're not in the room. They're going to find those opportunities for you. And when we think about this idea of being agile, when the opportunity comes, being able to work in it, to bend in it, you got to bend, but still be yourself.
Right. I think that's fair. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, and then after that, after the Where Does the Store Go? That was my third record, on my second on Republic Records. We parted ways, and they were actually cool enough to just let me out of my deal, which I still owed them 2 more albums, which was like very cool on their part. And we kind of just mutually split ways, and I went and released my third record through BMG, which was like a much more independent feeling thing. And I think we sold almost the same number of records, but we spent like an absolute fraction of the price, you know. And I went back to producing the whole album myself and writing all the songs and playing all the instruments, and we did just as well, but made a lot more money.
We better say, John?
I like this idea of agility, Marcus, but it reminds me of something which you and I teach here in marketing, which is empowerment. So how we empower our employees. And the thing about empowerment is you give your employees authority, but if they are not motivated to exploit that authority, then nothing happens. And it seems to me that agility is good, but it's got to be agility plus motivation, or agility plus self-awareness, or there's got to be something in you to allow you to take advantage of these opportunities. And it seems to me that you have done that. You are agile and you are also motivated. So, for example, when somebody said, whoever the producer was, Peanut Butter, said to you that, you know, this is not great hip hop, but the underlying samples are great. Do more of that. Not only were you agile, but you were motivated to take that advice and then lean into it. And that
Hmm.
perhaps was an inflection point in your career. Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, being knowing your history and your, knowing, I knew a little bit about how the record industry worked, at its core, and like how, who owned the masters, and I knew a little bit about publishing. Publishing is also incredibly complex. It's a whole nother podcast, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew enough to when I signed that first deal, I knew not to sign my publishing away. And that was really crucial also.
Mm.
And that has really, just like you gotta be motivated and willing to walk through the door when the opportunity comes, but you also gotta know your shit. Like
Yeah.
read some books. You know what I'm saying? No, so that when you sit down to the negotiating table, you know what you're talking about, and you can check somebody who's trying to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
That's really crucial too.
So, Mayor, I just want to be respectful of your time. I know you're busy man, busy man. I
Mm.
got two more questions for you here.
Yeah, sure.
So, imagine you're back. You're back here in Ann Arbor. You jump in the DeLorean. You go back in time to Ann Arbor. You're DJ haircut. You hanging out at you're playing at Blind Pig. What
Hmm.
advice would you give that guy, knowing what you know now?
I think what I would have tried to do a little more was seek out guys that knew more than me and that were like
Mm.
better at it than me, and try to like learn as much as I could from them. Try to find those people who are willing to teach you, those mentors, which I really did not have that. And consequently, we made so many mistakes because we were just like figuring it out as we went along. And a lot of those mistakes could have been easily avoided if I would have just like found my amp fiddler and been like, yo, how do you do this? What's the right way to do
Yeah.
this? And I could have just avoided so many of those pitfalls. Like I remember we made like went for Athletic Mike League for, this was my very first record deal as part of the rap group, my high school rap group. I remember we thought the way to be, to be successful was to be on the radio. So we went to WJLB in Detroit, and we said, how much does it cost to have a commercial on the radio? And it was like $5,000 or something, which was an insane amount of money for us at the time. I mean, we were broke high school. We were high school kids. And
Yeah.
we borrowed money from people and like scraped up everything we could put together, and we made this commercial, and it ran on WJLB, and it did absolutely nothing. For like nobody cared. It ran like, for a week on WJLB for $5,000, and we basically just wasted that money completely. And we had to spend the next year of our lives like paying that money back. And that was like a step that could, if somebody would have just been like, yo, don't do that, that's a waste of money, you'll be way better off like doing this instead. we could have saved a lot of that headache. So find people that know more than you and learn from them.
Yeah.
Try to just add, reach out and say like, "Hey, will you teach me how to do this?"
You
It's
know, the
hard.
funny
It's
part
hard
about that,
because it's like
the
you don't want to admit that you don't know something, but getting over that is one of the craziest lessons in life. Is like when you don't know something, don't just pretend like you know it. Go find someone who knows and be like, "Yo, how do you do this?"
yeah, the funny part about that is that I'll even tell some big brands, don't run radio ads, don't run television ads. This is not going to help you.
Yeah, well, for certain businesses and models, that is a great form of advertising, but for an independent rap group in Ann Arbor, that's not a good use of your money. There's way better ways to use your money.
So here's the last one for you. As you think about this idea of agility, of bending to the opportunities as they come to you, what are you most excited for next?
Right now, I've been doing a lot of writing and producing for upcoming artists who are younger than me and who are like just have that like youthful enthusiasm, and they're doing such, they're so creative and doing such cool things, and they're like it is so inspiring for me. It's been so much fun to like kind of be that like mentor in the room, and to like just have be the guy that has the references of all, and know a little bit more. I don't know it all, but like I know a little bit more, and to be able to share that and to like help some of these young cool artists, it's really inspiring, man. Working with 19-year-olds is like amazing. It's
You're
crazy.
like,
They just see things in a totally different way, and then it makes me see it in that way, and it just keeps me young, and it's very cool. It's been a lot of fun.
you are somebody else's Amp Hitler. Rest in peace, Amp Hitler. But you're
Yeah,
somebody else's Amp
yeah.
Hitler, which I think is awesome.
It's a really cool thing, man. It's honestly like it's just been such an eye-opening experience for me, and a way that I can be a part of. I can play a small part in something like a Doja Cat record that
Mm.
is so much bigger than me, and it's kind of like the the only way that I can like be a part of something like that and make something that is totally out of my wheelhouse, but I can contribute this like small piece to that huge juggernaut. It's very cool.
That's amazing. John, if you would please wrap us up here. Put this in a frame for us. So, the listening audience here, what's the takeaway?
I love your idea of agility as the disruptor, but I got to tell you, the most inspirational thing which you said for me today, Mayer, was this idea of authentic voice. And the story which you told is literally your authentic voice, right?
Hmm.
Not this kind of figurative, authentic voice which we talk about in business school, but you that was a big step in your development to realize that somebody else over engineering you and trying to make you sound like somebody different than you. I think that was for me incredibly inspirational, and perhaps the lesson for our listeners is having the self awareness to know what that authentic voice is and being able to say no when a producer, quote unquote, a producer is trying to take you in a different direction. So for me, that was great. And again, every time your voice comes on the radio here in Ann Arbor, let me do that again. And again, every time your voice comes on the radio here in Ann Arbor, I smile listening to your songs, and it's just been such a great pleasure to speak with you today, and hopefully we'll see you back home in Ann Arbor one of these days. It's not that far from LA, you know. All roads lead to Ann
Yeah.
Arbor.
Yeah, I'm actually playing the Majestic Theater in Detroit. I mean, I know that's not Ann Arbor, but that's as close as we're getting on this tour, unfortunately.
You know
But yeah,
anybody?
that's coming.
You know anybody who could get us some tickets?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Awesome. Mayer, thank you so much, man. We're so grateful for you. Super proud of you, man. Another leader in Invest. Thanks for the time. We really appreciate it.
Man, go blue. Marcus, John, thank you guys so much. Peace and
Thank
love.
you. Go
Peace and love,
blue.
guys.